welcome to How to Run a Successful Business and Still Have a Life. My name is Stacey Morgan, and today's episode is brought to you by Guilt Be Gone, my 2-night online workshop, which is all about working smarter and making time in life for the things that really matter. If you want to join us for Guilt Be Gone, you can register now at simplystaceymorgan.com. And today we're talking about one of the activities that we actually touch on in Guilt Be Gone, which is the Wheel of Life. Now, we talked a lot in the beginning of the podcast about the importance of setting yourself up for business success. But today I want to talk about setting yourself up for success in life and really being able to take time to evaluate where you're at currently, what's working, what could be better, and how we're going to step ourselves closer to our ultimate goals in life. And the activity that I'm talking about is the Wheel of Life. And this activity you may have done with some other facilitators that you have experienced in doing your own professional development. I was first exposed to the Wheel of Life as part of a workshop session that I did with the fabulous Lorraine Murphy. Lorraine is, of course, famous from her books. She's got 3 published incredible books and another one on the way. If you haven't checked her out, lorrainemurphy.com is where you can find her. She has incredible resources and is a great follow on Instagram. But she introduced me to the Wheel of Life in a workshop that she did maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it's been something that I've been continuing to do for me personally. I've been continuing to do with my team at Port Macquarie Performing Arts on a yearly basis. And I've also been teaching as part of many of our programs. Our Thrive Masterminders do a Wheel of Life exercise at the beginning of their program. And of course, we do it in Guilt Be Gone as well. And the Wheel of Life is really a coloring in exercise, which is even better. We all know the importance of coloring in and mindfulness. And if you're thinking, I don't have time, Stacey, to be coloring in, I'm very busy and very important. Well, I hear you, but I tell you what, there is purpose behind the Wheel of Life. And essentially, it's a circle that's been split into 5, 6, 7, 8 categories, depending on the wheel that you find. And there are 4,000 of them to download on Google if you want. But of course, if you want to get our very special Wheel of Life, you can get it as your tangible takeaway for this episode. You can do that at simplystaceymorgan.com/downloads. And the different sections that we have on ours include social life, your career/business, your financial life, your spiritual life, your physical activity, your friends and family, and all of these categories that make up our life. Health and wellness is also one there as well. All of these categories that make up our life, at times, some of these areas are going really well, and at other times, some not so well. And the Wheel of Life exercise is just about identifying where you're at currently, what's working, and what needs a little bit of work. So the Wheel of Life exercise has essentially 10 spaces between the center of the circle and the outside of the circle. And the idea is you make your way around for each category and you give yourself a score out of 10. You start at 0, which is in the center of the circle, and 10 goes all the way out to the edge. And then you color in that quadrant of your circle depending on what your score is. So if your score was 2, then you only have a little bit of coloring in to do. But if your score is 10, then of course you're coloring all the way out to the outside of the circle. I encourage you to get that download and give the Wheel of Life a go for yourself. Get your colored textures out, get your creative on, and give it a go, because it's really a really great visual display of exactly how you're going with your life in all of the different aspects that you have. Of course, many of us are not just working in our businesses, we're juggling all of the other aspects of life as well. And it's really important sometimes to take a step back and reflect on each of those areas in order for us to be able to make changes that will help move us forward in our lives. So once you've done your coloring in, you get a really good understanding of which are the categories of your life where you're doing really well because they're fully colored in, and which are kind of falling behind. And the idea behind the Wheel of Life is that a wheel is, it's circular, and just like the wheel of a car, the car is going to go smoothly down the road if all of the edges of the wheel are all of the same size. If you have a wheel that's got one edge that's really big and one edge that's really small, your trip down the road is going to be quite rickety and not at all smooth. And that's a metaphor for life. If you have an existence currently where all of your aspects are kind of equal, and they don't even have to be really high, but if they're all equal, then you're going to have a pretty smooth ride. Whereas if there's a really big difference between some of them, some of them are big and some of them are small, then that means that your life is going to be a little bit rickety. And the aim of the Wheel of Life exercise is to figure out what those areas are that are challenges currently in your life, and to be able to put action points in place in order to be able to bring those scores up a little bit higher for you. So once you've actually looked at the Wheel of Life activity, you've done your coloring in, you can see that perhaps in your health and wellness category, it's quite small. You haven't been looking after yourself. But in your financial category, you're doing really well. So it's up to 10. Then I encourage you for those areas to have a look at the strong ones and have a look at the weak ones. When you identify the three strongest, it's really important to give yourself a pat on the back and be able to identify why you gave that score to them. So let's say that you gave yourself 10 for financial, you gave yourself 10 for social life, and you gave yourself 10 for family. Looking at those categories and thinking about all of those and why you gave yourself those scores, it's important to be able to reflect on that and write that down. So perhaps you've been spending lots of time with your family lately. That's why you gave yourself a 10. Perhaps you hit all of your budget and goals for the middle of the year, and so therefore you gave yourself a 10 in finances. And you've had lots of parties to go to lately, so your social life is feeling pretty healthy and feeling pretty good, so you gave yourself a 10. Identifying those and writing those down and really being conscious of those things is a really important first step. The next thing you'll want to do is be able to identify the three weakest areas in your circle. And they're the ones that are going to be colored in closest to the center of your Wheel of Life circle. And then thinking about not just what caused you to give yourself that low score, but also, and this is the important part, thinking about what is something you can do right now that will edge you a little bit closer to the outside of your circle. And I'm not saying I want you to take your score from a 2 to a 10 overnight, because it's highly unlikely that it's just going to be one thing that is going to be able to move your score that much. But even if it's just 0.2 of a movement towards the outside of the circle, what are some things you can identify that will help you move from the center to the outside of that circle? So perhaps if your physicality was one of the things that scored low, your health and wellness was one of the things that scored low. You're not going to move yourself from a 2 up to a 10 just by going for a run tomorrow morning, but you might move yourself from a 2 to a 2.5, or for you, because running's maybe not your thing, that'll move you from a 2 to a 4. And so it's about identifying those areas in your life that you know that you could do better in, those areas that are closest to the center of your circle, and thinking about what are some things you can put on your to-do list, or what are some goals that you can set around those things in order to be able to move them a little bit closer. When I find that my family section is closer to the center, I often think about the people in my extended family that I'd really like to be spending time with that perhaps I don't get to spend a lot of time with, or perhaps I haven't been great in prioritizing time with. So, for example, my nan lives 20 minutes away from me, and I love spending time with her, but it's not something that happens every week. And that's because I haven't, prioritized that and scheduled that in my calendar. Even a catch up once a fortnight is something that I know that if I scheduled that in, that would get me a step closer to the outside of my circle when it came to my family category. And so putting that in my diary, making sure that's something that's actionable, making sure that it's something that's reoccurring. So it's not just, a one-off visit, but making sure that that is something that goes on is a really big takeaway from me from that. And I encourage you to find your own takeaways that will help you put some actionable steps in place, put something in the calendar, make something happen, go for that run, clean out the pantry from all of the chips and the dips and the lovely things that creep in there, and replace that with your fruits and vegetables so that you can take that little step closer to the outside of your circle, no matter what the category is that you want to improve in your life. And the Wheel of Life exercise is really fun to do with your whole family. It's really fun to do with your team in your business as well, because it's great to give people the power to be able to make great productive change in their life. And the Wheel of Life exercise I find really, really valuable. So if you don't have a copy of that and you don't want to Google your own, I encourage you to download the one that we have for you. You can download that at simplystacymorgan.com/downloads. And today's episode, of course, has been brought to you by Guilt Be Gone, our fabulous 2-night online course. I encourage you to join us for this intake. You will do the Wheel of Life exercise then. And of course, every time you do the Wheel of Life, it's going to be different. So don't don't put it off. Do one today when you've listened to this podcast, and then join us for Guilt Be Gone and do one in a couple of weeks' time as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love you to take a screenshot and stick it on your Insta story. You can tag me at Simply Stacey Morgan. Join us in the How to Run a Successful Business and Still Have a Life Facebook group. I hope you can join us there. We're having some great conversations with some like-minded business owners. You will be well celebrated and supported there. Please join us. You can search for us inside the Facebook platform. When all parts of a successful business are running smoothly and working together, the business is nice and healthy. If you don't know how healthy your business is, I encourage you to take our survey. You can do that by clicking on the Learn with Stacey tab at our website. We are here every week giving you bite-sized business tips and tangible takeaways in order to take your business to the next level and free up more time for you to be able to spend time in life on the things that really matter. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you next week.